Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. I needed to quench my throat with some cold coffee that feels really great today. A question that often is asked is, my monitor is calibrated. My prints come out not too dark, not too light. In fact, they look perfectly neutral. Including what I always tell you guys to first print. The standard evaluation image. Okay, that is your standard. That will tell you whether your printer on its own, basically using the driver and a matching paper for that particular brand printer, can produce on its own. And usually it'll be a very close rendition of that image. And here is a copy of one produced. I believe this was done with the Pro-100. And not OEM ink, but Precisioncolors Signature Edition inks for it. And again, simply letting the driver control color. Once you achieve that level of accuracy where you look at it with your eyes under a good light source so that it is bright enough to show you all of the detail that is in this image on paper, you will be able to discern whether this is printed correctly or not. Now, you are not to ever edit that image. You simply open it in your editing application and print it. But what happens is this. Often people complain about, they say, well, I have some of my images and I edited them and they look great on my monitor, but when I print them, maybe the yellows are not as brilliant as I see them on my monitor, or the reds or the oranges or the blues or the purples. Whatever the color, usually you will have a bit of not a mismatch in color, but it may not be as brilliant as you see it in your monitor. And of course, guess what? That is perfectly normal. You're never going to achieve the brilliancy, if you will, of the monitor's display of that image. And what happens often, you get a little carried away in your editing and you tend to oversaturate your image, because the more saturation, the more most people out there will say they prefer a nice image with bright colors instead of a more subtle and natural look. So I'm going to switch over to the screen and I'm going to show you how you can then check within your editing application. In this case, I'm going to use Photoshop, how to use whatever profile you want to print with for whatever paper, to show you how that profile is going to affect the final look on paper as opposed to what it looks like on your monitor. And then I'm also going to show you the fact that many times colors are just simply out of gamut. What does that mean? They are beyond the realm of a printer, for instance, regardless of who makes it, how many inks it has, to be able to reproduce these very extreme colors. And what I'm going to show you may indeed shock you. All right, so let's jump over to the screen. Okay, as you can see, I have my standard image open in Photoshop. And as you can see, it looks perfect. Everything looks great. Black to white ramp, neutral. You can see this little squares here all the way to 2, which is just a couple of ticks above black. Skin tones on these babies looks perfect. You need to look out for possibility of a color shift in the shadow side of the baby's faces. These strawberries look good enough to eat. This is a lava flow that has solidified. It's got some really neat looking blue shadows. I don't know about this image here. I don't know why they included it, but again, it is interesting. The yellow of these birch trees again and the canyon here in the desert out here. I think this might be the Grand Canyon after all. Again, it just looks like you just want to be there. But then I want you to take a really close look at these colors here, and specifically this top row. These colors are out of gamut. You will never, ever, let me emphasize that, never, ever going to be able to duplicate those colors the way you see them on your screen. The screen is capable, by the fact that it is backlit, to display colors that are basically almost neon in brightness and reflectiveness. Not so. You cannot reproduce that on paper. Paper prints are viewed by reflective light rather than transmitted light. So you have to take that into consideration. So let's go ahead and take a look at this image here as if I was looking at it through my ICC profile that I created for the Pro-1000 with Precisioncolor Signature Edition and Pro Luster paper. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. In order for you to be able to so-called soft proof any image that you load, you have to go to your Photoshop upper tabs, go to View, Proof Setup, Custom, and then in this window here, you're going to pick the actual profile. Here it is right here. This is the one that I created. It is a 1600 patch profile for Pro Luster utilizing the Precisioncolors inks. And you may say, well, that doesn't look too bad. Well, let me show you what it looks like without the profile, without seeing the image through that magic window, if you will, that is the profile. Check out what's happening right here in this region. And also here. Preview is off. So now we're looking at this the way the monitor displays it, which is beyond the capability of any printer. And of course, the capability of any paper you print on. This is what you're going to really get. Okay? Not that. This. Now notice that the big change in effect or look occurs only in these extreme colors right here. Check out the baby's faces. Really, nothing is changing, okay? Not much anyway. Even here, only the sky is changing slightly. You see that? Look at the strawberries. Even though they are relatively saturated, they are not changing that much. Look at this area here. Again, not changing that much. Somebody complained that they were getting changes in what the monitor was displaying up in these colors. And of course, those colors are unreproducible, okay? They cannot be reproduced by mere ink sets and printers. They can only be seen when they are optically reproduced on a monitor screen, not on paper. You will not be able to see them in paper. So as you can see, that is pretty drastic change. But if you look here, you really don't see a difference between these two green squares. There's supposed to be a difference, but the image, because of the level of so-called brightness and neon, if you will, of these two shades on a monitor, they just kind of blend together. But when you print them through my custom profile, it brings them out to a level that can actually be printed. Okay, so now that we are back to the unsoft-proofed view of this standard image, I'm going to go ahead and show you what the out-of-gamut warning plugin does. View and gamut warning. Everything that turns gray is out of gamut. In other words, it will not be able to be reproduced correctly by a printer. But take a look at this. This is what I really want you to see. I'm going to go ahead and toggle back and forth. Look at the kids. You see any gray? You see any blockage taking place? No. So something like this is a really important thing. All of these areas here doesn't mean that they're not going to be printed. They'll just be printed slightly different color from what you see, or hue, or density, or whatever, than what you actually see on your screen. That's all that's saying. So something as natural looking as this set of 4 little portraits of kids, notice that it was unaffected by the gamut warning, meaning that all of these colors are basically within the gamut of most printers. Let's take a look at this very natural looking still life right here. And we're going to go ahead and click gamut warning. Of course, some of the reds get grayed out. As you can see, the yellow did not. These did not. Right here in this red area here, it did a little bit. But again, that is just natural. This is what you have to understand. Now, let's switch over to just a regular image. One of my images, I went to Disney World not long ago. I was at Animal Kingdom, and I took this photograph of the area that basically represents India. And I went ahead and edited it to my taste. This looks great to me. I'm going to go ahead and print this. Let me show you. You can see how nice everything looks. Now let's go ahead and apply gamut warning. Not much turned gray. Not too much. Hardly anything. Some areas here in the green trees may be a little bit beyond the ability of most printers. Now, again, all of these warnings, the soft proofing, the gamut warning, they're a bit exaggerated, okay? A bit exaggerated. I could bring everything back into gamut by simply desaturating some areas a little bit more so that they're not as oversaturated. Sure, they look great on screen. They will look great on a website, but they just simply cannot be printed correctly. So if you see that something that should be bright yellow does not print as bright as you see it on your monitor, you just kind of need to accept the fact that that yellow, the way you edited it, may be out of gamut of that particular printer model. Now, some printers have different gamut volumes, if you will. They're able to reproduce some colors where others really cannot. Now, let's look at this under my profile and see what happens. Proof, custom. Here, this is the actual profile, OEM. And I'm going to go ahead and preview. And again, not much change, only down here in the density of the blacks changes a little bit. Let's go ahead and load my profile. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go, Canon Pro 100, Canon Pro Luster Chart 1600 patch, and we'll see what we get. Mine is better. You see that mine is better than the OEM. You do not see hardly any difference here in the shadow areas, except maybe here a little bit. There is almost no effect whatsoever. So my profile basically can take this image and reproduce it on paper the same way I see it on my screen. And that, folks, is the goal here, okay? You need to edit your images so that when you soft proof them through whatever profile for a paper printer combination you are using, you want it to show the least amount of change, okay? As you toggle back and forth. I hope this gives you a bit of a look to see exactly what's happening when you actually print an image from your monitor and the image turns out not to match what you have on your screen. Again, just remember that just because it looks a certain way on your screen, that does not mean that it's going to be reproduced exactly the same way on paper. What you are shooting for here is neutrality. Neutrality, in other words, if something is neutral gray, it has to print neutral gray. That's why we use that standard image, and we take a very, very careful look at that black to white ramp to make sure that it is linearly neutral all the way across. If you achieve that, more than likely all of your colors that are in gamut will print correctly. Now, you may ask, well, why is that image that you call the standard evaluation image contain such drastically out of gamut colors? Well, the reason is that they are shooting for somewhere in the near or far future, if we are still using printers to produce prints, photographic images on paper, we may or may not be doing that in the future. That image will still be able to accommodate whatever printers are manufactured to whatever increase in gamut they make them to be. That image should be able to accommodate anything coming down the pike, like I said, in the near or distant future. Who knows? Okay. You may need a printer with such fabulous inks that they can actually increase the gamut of colors that they can produce on paper. And of course, the paper has to be able to accept that ink and reflect back that image that was printed on it as bright as possible, okay, to closely match the backlit conditions of your screen. I don't think that's ever going to be achieved, but anyway, it is a goal that is worth attempting to reach. All right, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too boring. It's still interesting information, and I think it will answer some of you guys' questions when you get an image on paper that doesn't quite match. At least some colors may not match as you see them on your monitor. The quick answer is that it might just be impossible. Your colors may be out of gamut, and that would be the reason why that would occur. An image like I just showed you, my own image, which hardly changed at all when I soft proofed it, and I also ran the gamut warning filter on it. That image will print almost identical to what you see on the screen. Anything else that shows drastic blockages when you do the gamut warning or you do a soft proofing through whatever I2C profile you use, that image needs to be adjusted so that it does not produce such a drastic change when you are sort of soft proofing, like I said, and gamut warning checking. Okay, thank you so much again. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Happy printing as always. Bye-bye.